Hello, I'm Dale, and I'm joined by Mike Jones. Hello, Mike.
How you doing, Dale?
Well, I'm okay. Okay, so we have a busy show for you today. It's Sunday, March 8th, and we're going to be talking to you about some of the monitoring that we've been doing of county commissioners. We go to these meetings. You're there with us. Everything that happens, we videotape it because that's state law. We can do that. We can watch over these guys, and they bear watching. More than any time in my 15 years here, it's speeding up. It's actually speeding up. Have you noticed that, Mike?
It seems that way, but I don't have anything to use as a frame of reference. I've been only watching this for about a year, and it seemed pretty action packed. So I'll take your word for it.
Yes, it's definitely sped up. There's many more things happening in the meetings, every single meeting. And so we're going to play back a clip from this meeting right here, right now for you, and it's called "The Price We Pay So the Board Can Keep Up Appearances in Front of Other Counties." Go ahead and play that.
The dues and subscriptions are written down at $39,000 in both budgets. We paid $58,900, and we just made another $17,077. Our budget used to be about $75,000 for dues
every year.
We dropped it down. We're over budget. That needs to be real.
Yeah, and I think
But you guys
by
need to make
that
some calls.
is the fact that when we brought our dues out of the ONC, we brought out about $38,000.
Yeah.
We owed 18 from this previous year. The budget that they were requesting is for 2 years at 38. Theoretically, we already have 20 that should be sitting earmarked, and so the real ask is 18 for 2 years.
So we're going to need 18 more.
That's, I mean, those are ballpark.
No, I'm
They're
trying to
within,
figure it
they're within
out.
$1,000, but that's the number.
Okay, so
That's the ask that we need to do this year.
18 for that, and then AOC is 20. You guys want to do AOC again?
That's $20,000.
NACO is only 1,600. So I'm going to build these all in. RV 17,700. Soretti and the Chambers paid out of economic development. I don't worry about those. So I'm going to build these in, so that's going to go to now for $55,000. 58,000.
My idea is to build the budget the way it needs to be.
That's what I'm thinking. I need to get this in.
Yeah.
But I wanted to explain to you why it's jumped so much.
Well, the big one is that insurance.
Yeah, and I have no control over
No.
it. And I have no control over, the professional services, the audit.
We don't have a choice.
The only thing we've got in here that's flexible at all, in my opinion, is travel and education, and it was low. We haven't overspent. I don't see a reason to change it unless you guys just want to say we're not going to travel, but then if you do, you're going to be over budget. So I need to know what you want to plan.
But from my perspective, when I look at what other counties do, they're sending 2 and 3 commissioners to almost every AOC meeting.
So, we're holding our costs here. I don't see that
I think we're holding that
overspending.
down pretty good because we're not all going to all these meetings, even though we're members who could.
Mhm.
We're designating certain people to go to certain
Right.
meetings so that we're not spending
Right.
our money traveling.
Right.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, so $58,000 in memberships. And then you add on the travel expenses so that Simon Hare can go to Washington, D.C., for example, and then come back and report. He doesn't always report, but he reported that nothing happened.
Yeah.
Now, where does this money come from? Where did they get the money to do this travel and $58,000 for memberships and things? Where did they get the money? Mike knows.
Let me see.
Yes.
Yeah, ISF, that's what it is.
So they're always talking about, well, and you'll hear levy supporters say, "Oh, don't think about the ISF. Why? That's not 10%. No, no, no. It's 1/2 of 1%. No, it's not. It's
Well,
10%.
and really, to me, that's not even the biggest part of this whole lie. The
No,
biggest part of this whole lie is that they're spending this money on toilet paper and diesel fuel. They're not doing that. Uh, this is they're not cutting these checks for this stuff down in the commissioner's office. This is for commissioner's office operations, salary, PERS, retirement. It's that kind of stuff that's being paid for with the ISF. This is not, Scott Draper was asked about this on KJO here the other day, and he said, "Oh yeah, if I could have my business administrated for 10%, well, that leaves you to believe that, wait a minute, that 10% is the 10% that would be paid for administering the sheriff's office. Well, that's not what is happening in the commissioner's office with that 10%. They're lying to you about that. That's not what they're doing with that money at the commissioner's office.
and we've heard the argument. We've heard the argument several times. Oh, don't worry about the fact that they're taking that out. They're putting it all back in. No, they're not. See, once you start lying to me, then I have this feeling that maybe I shouldn't trust you. It's not all going back in. Where are they getting the money for these really expensive memberships? The one that's $1,500. I could use $1,500. Oh, that's really nothing. But, oh, we're getting such a good deal for the $25,000 membership. And each of these, because I sit there, and that means you're sitting there with me, each of these, we've heard them argue back and forth in the past. Well, that's really not worth it. And then somehow Simon Hare gets appointed chair of the chair committee, and now suddenly, oh, well, we have to pay our membership on that. Why? Well, because I'm chair of the chair committee, and so I get to pick the kind of chairs we sit in, or this is for comic effect. And the thing is, now we must pay the $25,000 a year in dues because Simon's a big wheel there.
But, this comes under the heading of my favorite rant, and that is, when are we going to start saying no to stuff? If we really are on the edge of being bankrupt in this county, and, everything is cut to the bone, as I've heard a number of commissioners say before, if that's the case, then why are we buying a membership to anything?
Well, let's suppose it was your household and that you were really, and you probably are, cut to the bone, okay? You can't do anything. And so what's going to happen when you say to your spouse, oh, by the way, that membership that I have in the whatever society?
Country club? Yes.
It's going to cost us $25,000, but we need to do it because, I'm chair of the golf committee for the... No, you can't do it.
Yeah, you just try that and see how well it works for you. No, you know what? Listen, we need to audit. We need to find out everything of these frivolous, in my view. And listen, there may be some of these memberships that it is cost effective or beneficial in some way to be a part of, and that's a different thing. I don't want to come off like I'm against everything, but the thing is, if indeed we really are in dire straits as they purport us to be, then perhaps we shouldn't be spending money on memberships to little societies of counties and cities and whatever, or I don't even know what these memberships are, but it seems
that's
to me,
one of the problems. Why don't we know? And I've thought about a lot this. No, I haven't. I've thought a lot about this. I've thought a lot about this. And one of the arguments that Simon Harris says all the time, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. Over and over and over again. Okay,
Right.
Here's the problem. We're not the only county that is involved with this O&C thing of the federal government not paying up on the contract that they have with us, and they'd like to slip out of it. No wonder they like to slip out of it. Okay, so then we'd like to control the forests ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. I do understand that. Since we're not the only county, and there are several counties that are part of that, at the moment, we would have to say to the other counties, look, we understand that we should pay our fair share, but we just can't do that right now because I, Simon Hare, am saying that we have nothing but lunkheads and dopes for that elected us. Yes, some of the people that elected you are dopes. And Cheryl Walker, 62 votes that got her into office. Okay, and because of that, we're just not going to be able to hold up our end this time. So as you're walking forward with that coffin, you only have 5 pallbearers because we're going to have to bow out. Our back is broken, okay? We don't have any money. We're hanging on by our fingertips. Sorry we can't put in our fair share. It's really terrible, but we won't be able to. Now, you think that they're going to work out the ultimate deal, which of course is going to be happening tomorrow, that we're all going to get the money all but Josephine County? No. Yes, it's a little embarrassing for them, but no. And they could say, here, call Mike Jones. He's the one that's responsible for this, not me, says Simon
Well,
here.
hey, they could say to these people, if they're worried about being embarrassed, hey, guess what? We're acting in the best interest of the people in our county. We don't have the money.
So drop out of all organizations. Let them carry the load. Sorry about that. Issue a silver-plated, well, no, a plastic-plated, no, maybe just a cloth piece of, a letter saying, sorry that we can't do it this time. We're not going to be able to do it for the foreseeable future. See you after we pass the next levy, which is sure to happen. And then let it go. Stay at home. You don't need what? Travel and education. Education? You can get your education from listening to the people who are telling you what they want. Stay at home. I'm kind of glad that Carl Wilson's out of the area, but okay, stay at home and cut off all your memberships. We don't need the memberships in these things. You're bringing back nothing anyway. And really cut back.
Yeah.
Why don't you play the next one?
Okay.
The next one's called, oh boy, I love this one. Commissioners quietly admit the ISF won't go back to the sheriff. It's for board, travel, and office staff. It's being spent.
You're going to have to do some slowing down, and I don't see politically that you can keep this office running full.
Well, politics cuts both ways. People don't like coming to a window that's closed.
That's true.
When they find they want access to their board.
And the harder you guys work, the more you need help out there. I'm well aware. But public so.
I have heard that the window, being closed during lunch and stuff like that. It's like, what do you mean? I'm here on my lunch break, and then there's a window that's not, what do I do? But that's the reality of what we're dealing with.
Well, the reality is they need to pay more than 58 cents. Sorry. That's pretty blunt, but that's the way it is. If we don't have the money, we can't have the staff.
Let me go back full swing. We are obligated to make a budget with the monies that we have available.
Exactly.
At the 58 cents.
Yeah, sure. And we have to do that.
Theoretically, there might be either through the levy or through a mandate from the state that our base rate is going to be $1.98 or $2 a thousand. And so this whole process then becomes an exercise in possibility, potentiality, but it has no real effect on us in reality. So I realize we've got to make a plan with what we have, and I think that can be done.
Well, if we were consistent with what I think our recommendation was to put costs in, and you can take them away. Most of the departments are proposing X with the ability to go down and up. And I think we just need to be prepared for that. But until all ISF budgets are in, we don't know what the whole landscape is going to look. There's also every year, usually we experience a carryover in ISF. We don't expend everything that we budget. So, I don't see this as fully our 100,000 within this department. I'm good with maintaining where we're at right now as a proposal, and thank you for putting that on the table as an option. That if we need to pull the trigger after all ISF budgets are in, that we have that option. But that's my recommendation, that we propose it as those status quo staffing levels for the fiscal year 15-16.
They don't like to talk about the ISF now. Do you have any questions out in the audience about, will all the ISF money go back to the Sheriff's Department? No. They're talking about they need to wait till they know how much ISF is going to come in.
Right. Do you think they're planning on taking it? And they said that there's usually some ISF carryover. Oh, are you kicking that back to the people? I don't think so. I think that they're not going to kick it back to the Sheriff's Department or whatever other department. You know what? I need to know so much more about the ISF. I really need to audit the ISF. I need to see the ISF accounting. And is the ISF the only funding for the commissioner's office? Or does that, because this is kind of a deceptive thing. They've sold this to us as the ISF is the cost of administering each department. And like they're pulling that money aside so that they can administer these other departments. Well, clearly that's not the case.
You
That's
just heard
obviously
him talking about, in these two clips, the truth about this. We don't get a chance to hear this except maybe once a year. And what they're using the ISF for, the Internal Services Fund. Oh, that's for paper and toner and all the nice things that IT does for information technology. This is so that they can go on trips, then get educated, whatever the heck that means, and they have an office staff that can serve them, and they keep the window open. Maybe we should shut down that window, and that'll teach people a lesson because they're not giving us enough. You know what? Stop believing that the ISF all goes back to the Sheriff's Department or to the animal shelter. No, it doesn't. 10% is skimmed off the top. I picked that word. That's my word. I picked that word specifically because that's what's happening. It's skimmed off the top so the commissioners can decide how to spend that money, and the whole idea, oh, it all goes back, why, that gives them no, and you've just seen the proof. Yeah, well, the next one's called, we went to the weekly business session. We've talked about this one before. This one's me ranting and raving, unlike what I do on the show. And the finance director was picked by Cheryl Walker to come out and explain to us dunces how the ISF is so important. Now, I haven't played back what he's saying because he's saying essentially what we just told you. What I'm doing here is I'm talking after he's done. It was a kind of an ISF for dummies because obviously we just don't understand why this is standard business practice, why all of that money is going to add all that money and more. I've actually had the levy people tell me, maybe you've heard them say this, more than is taken out, more than the 10% is going back into the Sheriff's Department. Now I've heard both. One is there's 1/2 of 1%. They're going to need to get their lies together here. I mean, their facts together here, right? And the other one is that when the sheriff, when 10% is taken out for nothing, okay, that the sheriff will get back like 15%. And so what a deal that is. Yeah.
Wow.
Right, and that's in addition to all the things you've just heard them talking about.
That's perpetual motion.
That's
we need to do nothing but this.
And we need to build more wheelchair ramps.
Yeah.
Okay,
wow.
So the lies just compound. Oh, you're so hard on them. No, you've just heard them talking about it. This is the thing they say this doesn't happen, and now they're talking about it. And they figured, have you noticed? Okay, the audio isn't as good as I'd like it to be. The audio from this meeting mysteriously has not been posted for anybody to see. Oh no, that audio just didn't end up, and so we're going off the camera's audio, and I'm back just about as far as they can get me. I'm almost outside the door. We're doing the very best that we can with the audio. Plus, you heard it with your own ears or didn't hear it. They're speaking sometimes in a really low voice. And there are things that the secretary there is telling them that we can't hear at all and and I've noticed sometimes you can't even hear it on their recorder and it's 6 inches away, 12 inches away from her. And Simon Hare absolutely speaks at a low volume when he really is talking about something that's kind of something that he don't want to share. They don't want to share this ISF with you at all. So here I am, getting up at the weekly business session, and I'm giving them heck. Go ahead.
There are a lot of things that our county could explain to us through the finance director. For example, why is it that Rosemary Padgett said that the Board of Commissioners ordered her not to report on progress on economic development projects? What is the progress for economic development projects? Another one that our finance director could report to all of the citizens about is what happened to that equipment that disappeared? Equipment that we bought, now we don't know where it is. You're not looking at me. You're supposed to look at me, remember?
I'm taking notes.
Yes,
Mr.
you can
Evans,
also
but
look at me.
I will yield to not looking at you.
Okay,
I won't take any notes.
It would just be polite. If we're required to look at you, if you're required to look at us.
No, you're just
Okay.
required to address Mr. Matthews. That's
Yes.
it.
All right, so point is,
Yes, please get to
we would like to know what happened to that equipment. We'd like a report about that. We're not going to get that. Instead, it's 2 months before the levy. This is why we're getting an ISF report, because the three main issues about people not voting for the levy the last several times is, one, they don't trust you, and SOS and Cuffs have told you this. Two, they say they can't afford it. You're not listening to them. And three, the ISF. This is why the ISF is top of the list to come and explain it to us. There are no state rules. You've told us several times, we're required by state law. We have to. No, you don't. Because if you did, if you were required by state law, you would show us where that state law is. You haven't been able to do that. 2 different levies have gone down since we brought up this issue about ISF. You could have done it all along, but you haven't. So we hear one of the levy supporters saying, oh, you know, it's actually not 10%. It's 1/2 of 1%. So we're not going to be fooled by lies either. So that's why we're hearing this. This was a pro-levy speech by our finance director. Nothing less than that. We're not fooled by this. And because we have an emergency situation with law enforcement, you could take an emergency measure. What would be more? We don't need someone getting up and giving us in a sing-song voice about things that we apparently don't understand. If the sheriff needs to buy toner or paper or legal services, he can buy it at a discount rate through the county without it having to go through county commissioners that we don't trust, all 3 of you. What he could do is, and I talked to him just about this last night, what he could do is when he needs those services, because we trust him, because we voted him in, and not about to recall him at the best opportunity, he could ask for these things. He could say, I want this. We're not fooled.
Yeah.
Now, does it sound to you as if I'm screaming at them?
Yes, that's what I heard.
No, I've been
heard
characterized that way.
You are screaming. You are out of your mind, out of your gourd. It was really all that he could do, Keith Heck, to keep from having the deputy haul you out of there. Who
are these people who are saying Dale Matthews gets up, takes over the entire meeting in 3 minutes, and is screaming at the top of his lungs? He's using expletives. Really? No. Who does it serve to say that? No, I'm not. And as Ed Bowers, but well, he gets up here and he babbles. I don't think it's babbling. I had a couple of questions for them. It's never been answered, and I'm speaking in a voice to them that's pretty moderate. And the thing about looking at us is that they're always saying, you should be looking at us and not at anybody else. Well, buddy, if you don't look at me, what am I looking at, the top of your head?
Yeah.
And notice I didn't say the top of your pointy little head. I wouldn't do that.
Yes.
It's
That would be wrong.
Yeah, go ahead and play the fourth one, and the fourth one's called. This is an additional one. I'm looking at my notes. To stop. This one is really important. It sounds like it's a little thing, but you're going to find out that this has long-reaching consequences, and they just decided this without a vote. To stop angry reactions to new hires and raises, the board just won't discuss it in public anymore. Go ahead and play that footage.
Yes. I would play that footage, but I don't have that on my list here.
Okay, so in lieu of that, sock puppets. No sock puppets. Okay, so what they've decided, they've gotten a lot of feedback from these new hires that they're doing, and it's happening every single week. New hires and raises. And they'll say, what people are leaving? When you're in an emergency situation, when you're barely hanging on by your fingertips, there's a couple things you can do. You can replace the people who are leaving with even higher paid people. You can give raises to the people who are there so they won't go. You can attract people from other places by giving them really pretty good deals with county government and PERS and all the rest of that. Or you can say, in our current situation, when somebody leaves, we just may not be able to replace them because we really can't afford to do that at this point. And instead of maintaining a status quo of hanging on by our fingernails, we'd like a little bit more breathing room with our budget. So they've gotten a lot of feedback from people who are saying, what the heck do you think you're doing? You're hiring more people every single week.
Yeah.
The HR director, and you know this, Mike knows it, I know it because I'm sitting there, and you're there with me. And every single week, there's not a week that's gone by that I can remember where the new human resources director hasn't come in and said, we got to give a raise to this person. The salaries never go down, or they're not crazy, that we need to hire this person, we need to replace this person, we need to hire two people. It's lots of hiring, lots of raises. So they've gotten really pilloried about this. They've gotten Hillaried about this. They've gotten all this criticism. So what's their solution? Well, let's stop doing that. No, are you crazy? They're not going to stop doing it.
No, they're going to stop doing it. It's just not the stopping that you think we're talking about. That's all.
They're going to stop talking about it in public.
That's right. Yes.
And they're not going to even talk about it in an executive session. What's going to happen now is the HR director is going to suggest it privately, quietly. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, like via email or something.
Yeah, to the liaison. One person, one member of the board, and he says in this clip, you'll just have to take my word for it. He says in this clip, well, once I notify one of you, that's notifying all of you. Oh, really? And so now it won't be, the big thing is, just like the Mark Von Holly contract, they're never going to do that in public ever again.
Yeah, in other words, and we've talked about this a number of times on the show, and it was my big pet peeve that I mentioned earlier, is they never say no to an expenditure, whether it's a raise, whether it's a new hire, a piece of software, a new truck, whatever, they got the money for it. It's in the budget. So, I think we've been drawing some attention to that, and they don't like that, and so they're just not going to talk about it anymore publicly.
This goes hand in hand. I'm going to try to be sure I get the numbers right. I'm trying to be sure I get the numbers right because they go by so quickly. They made a deal with Larry Graves out at the airport that I believe it's $50,000 now. I've never heard of this for a department head. He's not elected, but I think that he has the okay from them to sign on his own recognizance, on his own, just deciding on his own, up to that amount. Really? Really? Well,
That's
see,
amazing.
this way, Larry Graves doesn't come under any criticism. What kind of vetting did you do on this Osborne thing out at the airport for the drones? Well, I found out that he's Simon Hare's biggest contributor. Do I need to vet it beyond that? And so he makes this deal with these guys, and he can sign these deals, and all he needs to do is tell Cheryl Walker, and she's sure to come and explain it to all of us, just so that we know everything that's happening. This is the most transparent, as Simon Hare said, it's the most transparent county government in the world.
Really? I feel better already. Well,
So-
let me just tell you, just for your own your own purposes here, the two videos that I have left. One is when Josephine County government lies, and the other one is the big one. And I'm cued to the general excerpt area.
Well, okay, so we're going to ask your permission. No, we're not. We're not even going to discuss it in public anymore. We'll just do it without your permission.
Yes, we shouldn't have spoken to you about that in public because we might get some flack for that.
Yeah, and from now on, we're going to deal with that problem. You just won't ever hear about it.
That's
okay,
right.
all right. So go ahead and play the big one. This one is going to take approximately 11 minutes, but you really need to see this. And I'm going to put out a separate video. It's just taken forever. Well, you don't need to know all those details. It's better for you if you don't know.
Okay.
I think it does. Now, you probably know that there have been some new statistics and a bar chart that have come out that we've seen and we've been talking about and sharing with people about what the actual crime statistics, according to the FBI, based on our reported numbers from both of your organizations. And what it shows is the opposite of what I thought it was, the opposite of what we've all been told, is that crime is going down in our area. Now that you've probably seen that, and we just sent you a copy of that as well to your email address, Police Chief Landis, Bill. That being the case, you probably have seen these numbers. There needs to be some kind of explanation for it, because if these numbers are accepted, that's it for the levy. That's it. That's it for the next levy.
So Dale, I guess without me looking at charts and whatever and stuff, when you look at data, what data are you looking at, provided by who? And I guess the question I would have for you is, if you're looking at a decrease in crime statistics, we separate crime as the UCRs do into Part 1 and Part 2 offenses. So you have the serious, violent, person-to-person crimes in Part 1 offenses, and then we have Part 2, which usually is most of your property crimes and other things. So ICMA, which just did an audit in 2014 looking at statistics here in the city of Grants Pass, if you look at it, national trend shows violent crime is going down nationally. However, if we stacked up our violent crime, we're very safe within the city. The problem is property crime is through the roof. So your drug offenses and your property crimes, we actually look embarrassingly bad at those statistics in comparison. And the last thing I guess I would share with you about statistics is when people quit calling 911 or quit calling the police because they don't feel like they're going to get somebody, the problem with your crime reporting is it actually starts to show like crime is getting better when in fact it's not reflective of actually the true number of crime.
But listen, other than stories about, or presumptions about that having taken place, what do you have to back up that there's been an increase? Because that sounds like what you're saying.
Well, so a couple things about statistics and stuff is there's in criminal justice research, there's something called the dark number of crime, or basically crimes that are not reported to law enforcement agencies. And there can be a full variety of reasons why that doesn't happen, where they feel like they won't get a response, whether there's no one available or what have you, and certainly our county has that. So I guess the other thing I would say...
So wait a minute, hang on, you're saying we have statistics on that?
Research, I teach criminal justice. Okay. So there's the dark number of crime is crime that is not reported, so that things like the uniform crime reports can't actually capture that. So if you look at reported crime, we can certainly draw conclusions from reported crime. I guess my challenge to you and my question is, how do you draw conclusions for those crimes not reported and what is reflective of that? And hang on, let me finish.
Okay.
One of the measurements of that is
that's
the
a good
perception
question.
of safety. So out in your rural areas where people feel safe or not feel safe is truly sometimes more representative of the issue than the actual numbers of uniform crime reports and data that you're trying to say is reflective of whether there's a problem or not, or a problem.
Yes, but the problem with what you're saying is that it's not quantified. This is we're stating this as a theory, but there isn't any numbers to back that up. It's just an assumption, or
Actually, it's not an assumption, but I would say this to you. If you went out into the rural areas and different areas of Josephine County, one of the things you'd want to do, and there are national crime surveys that are used in different areas to actually capture that dark number of unreported crime. And unfortunately, we don't do that here, but nationally they do it in different pockets around the country. And that's how this phenomenon got known, is that actually when you look at those surveys, and those are people who report that they've been victims or whatever, versus what was actually reported, that's when you start to capture the fact that there's actually more crime than what the uniform crime reports will capture. So the other measurement then, and this comes from those experts that look at criminal justice and do criminal justice research, is when you go into a community, does that community overall have a sense of feeling safe? Because that is really then the other measurement of whether or not you're sufficiently serving the community from a criminal justice perspective or not.
I got to jump into this one at this point.
Yes.
I do understand what you're saying, but one of the reasons why, I'm not saying there's no crime. Look, neither Mike nor I, well, I'm not an idiot, okay? So we have to toss a little levity into this tough subject,
Okay.
Mike, please. Okay, so the problem with that is that one of the reasons why we feel unsafe is that a previous law enforcement official, and I won't mention him by name, but his initials are Gil Gilbertson, was telling us that 9% of the homes in Josephine County had been broken into. He had a press conference. He had a press release where it was saying 9%, and then it turned out later he had to admit that that was totally not true. So one of the reasons we have this perception is that when you go to KJO's News, it's all crime from New Jersey, any crime they can find. It's all that's on their website as far as the news goes. What proportion of this is based on reality and what's based on perception that's being pushed by people who want to raise our property taxes?
Well, Dale, the only thing I'd say about your perception issue is, if I live in a certain area and stuff and my car has been broken into, I'm going to have a different perception than you who may not have had your car broken into. So the only thing I would say to you is that that's why those citizen surveys are important, because that's actually how you start to measure, what the public wants, what they feel as far as safety, and that's kind of how you start to try to solve your criminal justice challenges.
Well, and that is a good point, but we're not doing that here. And what you had said was that there's a perception of being unsafe. And I think even in the campaign events that you guys have had recently, you talk about where it's worse than it's ever been and crime's out of control. Well, I just, number one, like to have something that's backing that up, and then that certainly could add to the perception of some people that it's very unsafe here. I personally, people often make this assumption, well, the economy's doing real bad, I'm doing fine, but my neighbor, I think, is probably not doing as well, so they have this perception of the economy being bad. Well, it may well be the same way with crime, and I understand that you guys really want to get funded. But I'm wondering, is there some way to shore this, what did you call it, black?
Yeah, the dark number of crime.
Number of crimes.
That's where those citizen surveys come in. And, my understanding is, I wasn't involved, but my understanding is the group that's got the petition to move forward with the levy in May, that's really what they were doing, was data and research and surveys to make that determination.
I see.
But let me just say this, Mike, to you. I would ask you this question. I've lived here since the 70s, and I guess I'd ask you this. I've never felt more uncomfortable leaving my car or truck at a boat ramp in Josephine County to go rafting or do something along the river than I have now. And while I'm in law enforcement and I can certainly look at numbers and data, which I do throughout my year and my career, I would say one of the things that I know personally is that I have a different perception than I've ever had about leaving that truck or that car there and what potentially is going to happen, more so than any other time I've ever lived here. And that's in those rural areas. So I would say just personally that I have that feeling, and so I open it up to those folks that live here and have lived here a while too, and how they feel about that.
But is your feeling on that based on numbers?
Well, I guess I would have to defer, but we were talking about the dark number. So my issue is, how do I know that a lot of those people along the river are still reporting those crimes when they know a deputy's not even going to come out and take the report?
Right, and how do we know they're not?
So all I was talking to you about is that feeling, that perception issue, and I was asking you the same thing. I don't know if you frequent the river or do recreational things. How long have you lived here, Mike?
About 12 years.
Okay, and where did you move from?
From California.
Okay, so I might have moved from a high crime area in an urban setting in California to Josephine County and have a whole different perception of crime because of where I came from versus someone that might have lived here for 30 or 40 years and who have watched things kind of change over time and has a different perception. Would you say that's probably fair?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, listen, individual perception is an individual thing. So
combined, though, if we took most of them, that's why I say surveys are important. If we took a combined survey and we started to listen and ask people about that, then that should paint the picture of what we're talking about here.
Now, wait a minute. Now, this survey was paid for by Cuffs, and the people that they asked to do the survey not only just did a scientific survey, but are also selling them services of how to pass the levy. So this thing about perception, I do understand you, and I was surprised by the FBI crime statistics, which are based on what we report to them. But here's my point. The county commissioners have said, boy, if you just have a positive attitude and feel like the economy is doing better, then it will. And the reverse is true. If you want to get someone to vote for a levy, if you tell them things are going to hell in a handbasket, then that serves those people who are saying that. It's all perceptions, and if we're going to vote on perceptions, my perception is I can't afford hardly anything, and I don't trust the county commissioners. So then that vote's over. If we're just going to base it on nothing but perception.
My job, and I think the sheriff would probably say the same, we're not here to talk to you about a levy. What we're here to try to talk to you about is our job and crime and what we basically try to attempt to do based on what we see and what we know to do. So I'm not specifically engaging you based on a levy or funding. I can tell you what the needs are based on our job and what we've done. I've worked here for almost 25 years. Dave's worked here a long time, and I think both of us are trying to come at this to not whether or not we need more money, but I can tell you that you can't do with what we're basically talking about here.
Right. Hey, let me. And there you have it.
Now you watch that. When did, and that was all Chief Landis, when did Chief Landis, I like the guy, when did he back down? What was it that was said that suddenly now he doesn't want to talk about the levy anymore? What was it?
It was the perceptions of things, but oh no, wait a minute. You said, then my perception is I don't have any money and I can't afford it anymore, and I don't trust the commissioners.
Right. Here's the thing. When they're saying we're not going to rely on our own numbers, we're not going to rely on the FBI statistics. We have no numbers to put in front of you, but it's based on our feelings about this. Mm-hmm. And they say, but what you need to do is you need to do a survey of the public. We've had surveys. They're called votes. We need to do a survey of the public, and this professionals, they're professionals, Mike. What's the matter with you? And they've come in and they've surveyed. But these professionals are doing two things. One is they're surveying because they've been paid to do so, and their answer magically is we need to pass a levy, and then they're selling the services to the levy guys of how to pass it. This isn't a survey.
Yes. No, you know what? It's been shown over and over that listen, people do it all the time, It's called a push poll, and a push poll means you ask the question in a certain way. Well, and they did this just a couple of years ago with the advisory question on the ballot. Do you think we should cut more trees? Well, you know, in the areas where there was burned trees, and everybody goes, well, sure, yeah. I mean, that just makes common sense. So if you ask somebody, do you think that we should protect the children from being murdered by ISIS?
No, no, I'm totally against that.
Yes. No, and you know, it's funny. That sounds ludicrous. I know that sounds ludicrous to you, but who was it here at the radio station? There's Chuck, and then there's the other guy. I keep forgetting the other guy's name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either. It doesn't matter. They're interchangeable.
It doesn't really, but he suggested he made an analogy of the crime taking place in Josephine County and analogized it to ISIS there.
You're being manipulated. They call in a survey group, and the survey group I was there when they were talking about this. The survey group sold their services to Cuffs and what's Cuffs? SOS. Okay, same people. They sold their survey services to them as kind of like a survey with a smile. Not only will we survey, and you're going to get the answers you want, is the subtext, but we're also going to help you pass it. This is not a legitimate survey. This is not scientific. This is
political consultation.
Yeah, and even this guy fell in with it. And you were surprised when I told you about Scott Draper's wife. What does Scott Draper's wife say that her main occupation is? Do you remember?
Oh, you want me to answer that? Yeah, well, yeah. I guess she's a political consultant, I guess.
Right. So this is not some scientific survey where they're finding out what the people really think and they're giving them what they really want. No, you're being manipulated, or they're trying to manipulate you. Snap out of it. Don't believe this stuff, okay? Maybe we really do need more police protection. I'd like to see them doubling up so that we're not going to risk $1 million lawsuit when someone gets killed because there's one guy out there all by himself. I think that's their best argument. But you know why they're not going to talk about that? Because they're not going to do that. That would convince me to put more money into it, but they're not going to do that. So just say no to liars and cheaters and people who are trying to manipulate you. Tell them that they're probably already started all over again because they see the writing on the wall. Tell you what they're going to do. They're going to come in with something that's going to be like 5 cents, right? And they're going to get you to pass that because it doesn't mean anything. And once they got their nose inside the tent, they're going to come in with the whole hump.
Well, and the funny thing is that you would have thought that they would have done that already after the last one, which was $1.19.
Now, why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they doing that? Why have they come up with $1.40 instead of $1.19? Why don't they settle for less? Well, you had a theory about this. I'll remind you of your own theory.
Okay.
They want everything.
Yes, well, that's true.
It just getting us to vote for this thing isn't enough.
I am brilliant. Now that I hear my own theory back, yes.
You just need to be reminded about how brilliant you are. Let's all be brilliant. Say no to liars. Say no to manipulators. Say no to people who, I think many of them have a good heart, but they're willing to drink the Kool-Aid. They're drinking the Kool-Aid on their own. Really, stop it. Stop it. You just got this big purple thing around your mouth. You drank too much of the Kool-Aid. We'll keep you informed.